Imagine waking up to find your nation's economy in freefall. This nightmare became reality for many Russians. Russia, once a powerhouse of natural resources, now teeters on the edge of collapse. Russia lost more than $600 billion from its war chest in an instant, and now the ruble is on the brink of collapse, threatening to bring the entire economy down with it. With sanctions crippling its economic lifeline, how did it all unravel so quickly? Keep watching as we delve into the severe sanctions and their far-reaching impacts on the collapse of the Russian ruble and the country's future. Everyone knows that Russia is rich in natural resources, especially oil and gas. Before the invasion of Ukraine, Russia was successfully exporting these resources worldwide, earning huge revenue. However, the invasion led Western countries to reject Russian energy products as a form of sanction. Russia, in response, shifted its focus to China and India, trying to maintain its income by selling more to these countries. Yet enforcing these sanctions has made it increasingly difficult for Russia to export its goods, especially to India. India is becoming wary of the repercussions that trading with Russia might have on its relationships with other countries. As a result, the Russian economy is facing serious challenges. Russia isn't self-sufficient. It depends heavily on imports to sustain its economy. Now, as the ruble continues to struggle, the economic stability of Russia is at risk, potentially leading to a significant downturn that echoes through every corner of the country. While Russia has diversified its trade partners, relying more on China and India, this shift has not been without challenges. China's economic policies are increasingly assertive, and their purchasing terms can be stringent. Additionally, the logistics of redirecting vast quantities of oil and gas from Europe to Asia require significant infrastructure adjustments, such as building new pipelines and modifying port facilities. These adaptations are costly and time-consuming, adding to Russia's economic burden. Historically, Russia has faced international sanctions before, such as post-Crimea annexation in 2014. During that period, the Russian economy experienced a recession, the ruble depreciated significantly, and inflation surged. The current sanctions are more extensive, targeting key sectors and leading to a broader economic impact. The previous resilient strategies are now being tested to their limits. Right after the invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, inflation in Russia surged dramatically, reaching 17.8% by April. This spike was driven by two main factors: a sharp drop in the value of the Russian ruble, which plummeted to around 130 rubles to $1, and sanctions that created shortages of various goods, pushing prices higher. In contrast, in the US, inflation was easing back down to 8.3% during the same period, indicating that the steep inflation in Russia was largely due to sanctions rather than global economic trends. The Russian central bank, in response, drastically raised interest rates from a pre-war level of 9.5% to 20%. It helped to gradually reduce inflation to 12% by December 2022. The first 4 months of 2023 saw a remarkable decrease in inflation, dropping from 12% at the end of 2022 to 2.3% by April. It positioned Russia among the countries with the lowest inflation rates globally at that time. This was quite notable because interest rates were not increased during this period. Instead, they were actually lowered 6 times between April and September 2022, settling at 7.5% in September. The next rate hike didn't occur until July 2023. This unusual situation where inflation decreased despite stable or falling interest rates defies typical expectations that interest rates and inflation levels are closely linked. However, from May to November 2023, there was a consistent monthly increase in inflation, climbing from 2.5% to 7.5%. In recent months, inflation has remained stubbornly high. It was 7.4% in December 2023 and January 2024, and increased to 7.7% in February 2024, the highest rate since February 2023. To get a clear picture of Russia's inflation issues, let's compare it with other major economies. Right now, Russia has the third highest inflation rate among the G20 countries, only behind Argentina and Turkey. Argentina is in a tough spot with inflation at a shocking 276%, showing just how out of control things have gotten there. Turkey is also struggling with inflation at 67% due to big problems with its currency losing value, making everything Turkey needs to buy from other countries more expensive. Russia's inflation is even higher than in South Africa, India, Brazil, and Mexico, countries that have their own economic problems but lower inflation rates. What's really worrying for Russia is that its inflation keeps going up, even though it's been trying hard to stop it by raising interest rates. Usually, when a country hikes up interest rates, it helps control inflation. Higher interest rates make borrowing money more expensive, which means people and businesses might think twice about taking on new loans. It also makes existing loans costlier and encourages saving over spending. These steps should reduce the amount people buy and help keep prices stable. But despite all these actions, Russia's inflation isn't slowing down, showing just how tricky the situation is. According to simple economic rules, if people buy less while the amount of goods available stays the same, prices usually drop, which should lower inflation. This idea influenced Russia's actions after the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, which pushed inflation up to 18%. To deal with this, the Russian central bank raised the official interest rate to a very high 20%. But this change was quickly undone, and within 6 months, interest rates were even lower than before the war, sitting at 7.5% by September 2022. Then rates started to climb again in July 2023. From July to December 2023, the Bank of Russia increased interest rates 5 times, bringing them up to 16%. Rates this high really put a brake on borrowing. To see how unusual this is, let's look at the past. In the USA, you'd have to go back to 1981 during a major global recession to find similar interest rates, when inflation was around 14%. In the UK, rates were over 16% back in 1980, when inflation was at 18%. The current official interest rate of 16% in Russia seems excessive, given that inflation is now only 7.7%. Consider that just 15 months ago, in February 2023, Russia's inflation was 11%, and the interest rate was only 7.5%. This discrepancy raises questions about the consistency of the Bank of Russia's policies, especially given the dramatic drop in inflation from around 12% to about 2% during a period when interest rates remained flat. Looking at the broader geopolitical landscape, Russia's isolation from Western financial systems, including SWIFT, has significantly disrupted its ability to conduct international transactions. This isolation has forced Russia to develop alternative financial systems, such as increasing the use of Chinese yuan in trade with China. While these measures provide some relief, they do not fully compensate for the loss of access to Western financial markets and the associated stability and trust. This situation suggests that something unusual may be influencing Russia's economic strategy and the effectiveness of its monetary policy. International sanctions have also impacted Russia's energy sector in ways beyond mere export restrictions. The technology and expertise required for deep-water drilling, Arctic exploration, and shale oil extraction, predominantly sourced from Western companies, are now unavailable. This limitation significantly curtails Russia's ability to tap into new oil reserves, threatening the long-term sustainability of its energy production and revenues. The current economic situation in Russia suggests one of 2 explanations. Either the inflation figures from 12 months ago were not accurate, and inflation was actually higher than reported, or the intensified sanctions and their increased enforcement over the last 6 months are now significantly impacting the Russian economy, leading to a rapid increase in inflation. Under normal circumstances, when a country raises its interest rates, it generally boosts the value of its currency. The reasoning is that higher interest rates make the country more attractive to investors seeking better returns, which should lead to an influx of capital. However, the recent sharp increase in interest rates in Russia tells a different story regarding the Russian ruble. The depreciation of the ruble has had a profound impact on the purchasing power of ordinary Russians. Imported goods, including essential items such as food and medicine, have become significantly more expensive. This price hike has led to a decrease in the standard of living and has sparked public discontent. The government's efforts to control prices through subsidies and price caps have had limited success and have further strained the national budget. About a year ago, $1 was worth about 75 rubles. Today, it trades at around 93 rubles, indicating a depreciation of nearly 20% over the last year. In July 2023, the official interest rate was 7.5%, but it has since more than doubled to 16%. Despite this significant increase, the ruble has only fallen from around 89 to 93 against the dollar over the past 8 months, a decrease of about 4.5%. This suggests 2 key insights. First, the value of the ruble does not seem to be linked to Russia's interest rates. Even if the rate soared to 100%, it is doubtful that many international investors would consider depositing substantial funds in Russia under the current circumstances. Secondly, the ruble is experiencing downward pressure primarily due to the broader struggles within the Russian economy, rather than as a direct consequence of interest rate changes. President Vladimir Putin was recently re-elected for another 6-year term, following his previous election in 2018. During the 2018 campaign, he made several commitments to improve the living standards and life expectancy of the Russian people. Reviewing these promises reveals mixed results. In 2017, 12.9% of Russians were living below the poverty line, defined as earning less than 14,339 rubles per month. That's approximately $157. Putin pledged to reduce this figure to 6.5%. By the end of his 6-year term, however, the poverty rate had only decreased to 9.3%, falling short of the target. More recently, he has set a new goal to lower the poverty rate to 7% by 2030. Efforts to reduce poverty in 2023 included increasing wages due to labor shortages, boosting benefits for families and children, raising salaries to attract contract soldiers, and providing compensation to families of those killed or wounded in Ukraine. While these measures may have decreased poverty, they also contributed to rising inflation, further complicating the Russian economy. In addition to these economic challenges, Russia faces demographic issues that compound its problems. The population is aging, and the birth rate remains low, leading to a shrinking workforce. This demographic decline poses long-term challenges for economic growth and social services. The government has introduced policies to encourage higher birth rates and improve healthcare, but these measures will take time to produce significant results. Another key pledge from the 2018 election was to increase Russia's life expectancy to 78 years by 2024. In 2018, the life expectancy was 72.3 years. Over the past 6 years, it has seen a slight improvement to 73.1 years, but this is still significantly below the promised 78 years. Life expectancy is a critical indicator of living standards, as higher life expectancy generally correlates with better quality of life. The current figures suggest that improvements in living conditions in Russia have been limited and haven't reached the levels promised by President Putin. Despite high interest rates, the Russian ruble keeps falling, making it more expensive for Russians to buy imported goods. This situation is creating a tough cycle, as rising import costs drive up inflation. The data shows that Russia's economy is facing serious problems, and these aren't easy to fix. While the Bank of Russia could raise interest rates even higher, maybe as high as some countries facing economic crises, such extreme measures could lead to major problems, like people preferring to use stable currencies like the US dollar instead of the ruble. The strain on Russia's economy is largely due to international sanctions, and things look shaky. If inflation keeps going up, the central bank might need to cut back on spending money into the economy, but this could lead to a recession. This is tricky because the government says the economy is supposed to grow by 3 to 4% in 2024. The next few months are crucial. It'll be interesting to see how Russia handles these challenges and if they can stabilize their economy or if things will get worse. Experts are closely watching Russia's moves in the international arena. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more videos about the global economy.